Hello everyone, welcome to AgilePoint NX product briefing for 2024. Over the next couple of hours, I'm going to walk you through some of the core features of the AgilePoint platform, especially highlighting some of the features which have been added since the last briefing. Our last briefing was on top of AgilePoint NX version 8, which was a major user experience release for us where the entire user experience of the product was overhauled. We recently released AgilePoint NX version 9, which is our current major release, where we built on top of all the good work which was done in AgilePoint NX version 8 and added a lot more user experience features as well as citizen developer features, which I'll show you as I start building the app today. So without further wait, I'm going to go and get started by spinning up a new subscription of AgilePoint. To save time, I've already sent myself an invitation, so I'm going to paste it over here. Now, one of the first decision points is what kind of identity provider do I want to use for my tenant? AgilePoint supports the concept of bring your own identity, where we support some of the industry famous authentication providers. More than 15 of them are supported. So you can see the likes of MS Azure Active Directory, Google, Salesforce, Okta, Ping Federate, SiteMinder, Oracle Access Manager, AWS Cognito Services, all being supported. For those customers who do not have an already existing identity provider, they can always use the inbuilt one, which is called AgilePoint ID, and that's what we are going to use for today's demo. I'm going to pick a username, password, job title. For company name, I'm going to paste the username for now, and I'm going to pick a phone number and go ahead and click register. Now what this does is it starts spinning up a new subscription of AgilePoint. Behind the scene, it will provision all the required databases as well. This process can take anywhere from 35 to 40 seconds. So what I'm going to do is in the meantime, I'm going to walk you through what kind of environment we are going to use for today's demo as well as the demo scenario. AgilePoint is available in 3 different editions. AgilePoint NX for on-premises, AgilePoint NX for private cloud, which can be your private cloud subscription or we can host it for you, and AgilePoint NX on demand, which is a multi-tenant SaaS offering. One thing to notice across all these 3 editions, the source code base is exactly the same, so you can seamlessly move between any of these editions at any point of time. For today's demo, I'm going to use AgilePoint NX on demand. I'm using AWS environment today, but AgilePoint is available in Azure as well. There are 2 virtual machines in NLB, which auto scale based on load. And for database, I'm using Amazon RDS. Now, as I mentioned, it is a true multi-tenant environment. So there are a couple of these virtual machines which are serving all the customers in this cluster. However, each customer still gets their own isolated database. It is GDPR compliant. Customer owns the data, they can download it, they can report against it, they can even delete it as well. So it's completely safe from a data privacy perspective. I'm going to build a customer onboarding and order management scenario today. I'm going to build a fictitious furniture store where it can be a new customer and customer's profile should be inserted in customer table upon form submission, and the order should be only inserted once the payment has been processed. It can be an existing customer. In that case, the customer profile should be pre-populated on the form. I can still change things like phone number and email, which should be updated back to the customer table, and the order should be inserted once the payment has been processed. As far as data synchronization policies go, I'm going to set up 3 different data synchronization policies. For customers, I'm going to use an immediate sync policy where customer profile should be inserted as soon as the form is submitted. I'm going to show existing customers order history, and for that I'm going to use a no sync policy because it doesn't make any sense to sync any read-only data. And for current order and payment, I'm going to follow a deferred sync policy which should be inserted only once the payment has been processed. As far as integrations are concerned, I'm going to use a whole lot of integration in today's demo. I'm going to use AgilePoint Data Entity for managing my customers and orders, Office 365 for managing my product catalog as well as storing any documents, PayPal for payment processing, Salesforce for product inventory check, Amazon Machine Learning for AI-driven process routing, Microsoft Cognitive Services for Natural language processing, I'm going to bring in some sentiment analysis, UiPath for RPA, SQL Server for reporting, and for maps and location services, I'm going to use Google Maps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move back to my browser window over here. And as you can see, I've already been redirected to my portal home screen. So what you see on the screen is the vanilla home screen, which comes out of the box. And later on in the demo, you will see how this changes. But before we get started, I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of all the modules at the top. AgilePoint Work Center. This is the end user area where end users can work day in and day out. They can submit new requests, consume their tasks, consume reports, set up their vacation schedules, etc. Manage Center. This is the admin and power user area where admin and application owners can manage the runtime instances of their applications, both in bulk as well as individually. Admins can set up connection to different systems and manage the overall health of the system. App Builder, we are going to spend most of our time today over here. This is used by application designers to build the applications. Data Entity, this is a browser-based built-in entity designer where citizen developers can create tables and their relationships without having to know any of the complex SQL queries. Page Builder, just a moment back, I mentioned that this is the vanilla home screen which comes out of the box, but using Page Builder, you can create your own custom portal experiences. Your portal homepage can be created as well as team-specific landing pages. Analytics Center for creating reports and dashboards. App Store comes with pre-built application templates. More than 70 of them are available as a quick start template. I'm going to use one of them today. Settings module, which can be used to enforce the governance policies or your organization-wide policies. Before I get started, I'm going to go to user profile. I'm going to change my display name. I can always change my preferred locale and the whole portal experience would start showing up in that language. Upload my profile image. One thing you'll notice over here is that there is no QR code configured right now because it's a new environment. Later on, you'll see how it changes. Next, I'm going to go to the settings module to set up some organization policies. I might be one of those customers who do not want to create an altogether different landing page. I might want to just change the logo and the illustration page image on the home page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say replace my logo and the illustration image as well to match a furniture store. Now the effect of this is if I open my home page in a new tab, you can see the logo has changed and the illustration image has also changed. Next, you can go to manage modules and enable disable certain modules for your entire organization. For example, I have turned off collaboration center in this case. If I go to work center, there are literally dozens of settings which you can control or personalize your work center. If I go to app builder, process builder, I can say enable use of BPMN properties for my organization. If I go to form builder properties, one of the things you'll notice is I can enforce the use of global level CSS so that all my apps in my environment inherit or follow the same theme. In that case, most likely I would have taken away ability to inject your app specific CSS. I'm going to leave it as default. Similarly, I can manage settings for data entities, page builder, analytics. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and generate a mobile QR code. I don't want my users to be typing lengthy URLs or pick up authentication providers. Let's make it simpler for them. Now the effect of this is if I go to the user profile, every user in their profile will now see the QR code which they can quickly scan and configure the mobile application. If I go to administration section, if you remember, I started with AgilePoint ID and that's what is listed over here. But oftentimes it is common that customers might have multiple authentication providers which they might have got through acquisitions. So you can always enable multiple of them in parallel. Just to show you the concept, if I switch to a different environment, over here I have configured multiple Salesforce providers, MS Azure Active Directory, AgilePoint ID, etc. Now for third-party authentications, we do let you manage your user profiles in your user store itself. So your user profile, their roles, group membership, they can be auto-synchronized with AgilePoint once the user logs in. You don't have to manage them in AgilePoint itself. Let's go back to our environment. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to disable sync user email IDs because I'm going to use same email ID for all my users. Now I can onboard multiple users. I can download this Excel template, fill it out and upload it back, and it will create all the AgilePoint IDs and mail out the passwords to those users. Now I'm going to only create a couple of users, so I'm going to do it manually. I'm going to click Manage Center. Add user screen comes up. I'm going to pick my first username. I'll call it Citizen Developer. For email, I'm going to quickly go to my scratchpad over here and copy email. I'm going to mark myself as manager. Now I can change user's language preferences. I'm going to set it up as English. I can set up his social IDs, in this case, Yammer ID, Microsoft Teams, Salesforce Chatter ID, and phone number, so that user can work on the task from these devices as well. I'm going to leave it as blank for now. AgilePoint has a role-based access control system where it comes with out-of-the-box 5 roles: administrators, app designers, runtime managers, citizen developers, and users. A user can be part of multiple roles as well, and you can define as many custom roles as you want. These 5 come with predefined permission set, but you can always tweak it as per your requirement. For today's demo, I'm going to add this user to citizen developer role. Click Next. It is asking me, do I want to add user to any of the ad hoc groups? I'm going to say no. Let's go ahead and create the user. Similarly, I'm going to add a couple more users. I'll onboard a developer. Email ID, I'm going to use the same email ID and set myself as the manager. This user, I'm going to add in the application designer role. Let's go ahead and create it. And the third user I'm going to create is a QA user. For email ID, I'm going to use the same email ID, myself as the manager. Just for the sake of it, I'm going to set this user's language preference to Japanese. I'm going to leave him in the bare minimum access right level, which is user's role. Let's go ahead and create this. So the user has been created. If I switch back to my other browser window over here, I've received the credentials. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a private browser window over here and try to log in as the QA user. So now if you remember, I set up this user's language preference to be Japanese, and that's why you are seeing the whole portal experience showing up in Japanese, and he is seeing the bare minimum access rights working over here. He's only seeing the work center module, the data entity module, and the help module in this case. Okay, let's go ahead and log out and close this window. We'll go back to our original window in this case. While I'm in Manage Center, I'm going to quickly show you some of the other features. So if I'm on the overview screen, I can see how my system is performing, overdue task, fail notifications, suspended processes. I can always personalize it as well and add other modules. I see the overall snapshot of what's happening within my tenant. If I go to runtime management, I can manage the runtime instances of my processes, tasks, notifications. We'll see this later on. If I go to app management, I can manage the permissions. I'm going to add newly added users to a couple of groups over here. Now, AgilePoint does allow you to create bundles or packages and move applications from one environment to another. For that, you will need package owner permission. So I'm going to add the new users to package owner. I'm going to click on add member. I can search users based on groups, username, full name. I'm going to say just search by username. Add the user. Going to add the second user over here as well quickly. And go ahead and click update. Similarly, I'll add them to entity designer role. So both of them are added in this case. And last, I'm going to give them permissions to page designer as well. and go ahead and click update. Now, if I go to App Builder menu over here, you can define environment-wide variables, which we call as shared variables. You can create global level email templates to be reused across applications. You can create connections to external systems. It can be created both at a global level and reused across applications, or it can be created at an app level, kept it secured within the context of the application. I'm going to create some global level tokens today. I'm going to click on Add Token. You can see the list of all the hundreds of systems AgilePoint supports and create connections to them. For example, if I click on Salesforce, suppose all the advanced authentication providers, if you're familiar with Salesforce, supports OpenID Connect. So it's asking me for consumer key, consumer secret, generate an OAuth2 token. And from a security perspective, I can specify auto recycle this token every 15 minutes so it never gets compromised. So I can enable that advanced security as well. If I have defined these connections in a different environment, I can always bring them by importing it. These are connection to all the systems I'm going to use in today's demo. You can always drill down, you can always lock it down to a specific user or group. In this case, I'm going to leave it as default for today. If I go to eForm settings, I can set up environment-wide validation mask, file extension rules. I can set up languages for my forms. I can translate all the common words like submit and cancel in one central area so that all forms can pick it up. If I go to access control, as I mentioned, AgilePoint has a role-based access control system with a layered security and governance framework. So what you're looking at is the first layer of security, which is the platform layer. There's a data layer, app layer, analytics layer, as well as page layer security as well, which we'll see later on. So if I drill down into roles, I can always add any number of custom roles as I wanted. There are more than 105 permissions which I can manage at the platform level itself. If I drill down, you can, under access control tab, you can see all the admin kind of permissions, whether I can add a new user or delete a user or create connection to other systems. Under apps, I can see all the runtime permissions, whether I can initiate a process or cancel a process or reassign tasks. What modules would I see at the top when I log in? If I have been given permission to App Builder, what kind of actions I can perform within App Builder, whether I can undo checkout files on behalf of other users or not, those kind of actions. If I'm one of the global settings manager, what kind of organization policies can I change? Most likely you're going to give these permissions to admins only, and what permissions I have within analytics. Similarly, as system admin, I can see who all are logged into my system. If you remember, I have logged in as 2 different users. I can monitor the health of my organization, how many users are there, how many apps have been created, how many forms, how many processes, how are they doing at runtime. So a complete snapshot of what's happening. And AgilePoint is an event-driven system. So for everything, there is an event which we can publish to an external endpoint using webhooks over here. Now, before I log out as administrator, I'm going to procure an app from App Store called Package Migration App. It's a utility app, and you'll see it later on in my demo. Shows me an overview of the application, how the forms and process look like. You can always change it. Description, there is a video on how to use it. I'm going to go ahead and click Add, trust it. It tells me I have added this app for my organization. If I go back, let's close a couple of these tabs. Go to App Builder, all apps. I can see the app is listed over here. Now I'm not going to give anybody else permission to change the design of this application. Now before I sign out, one thing I also want to show is I have ability to switch to my production environment from here itself. I can click on production. And if I log in, it takes me back to the production environment. I can always make that switch from here. Let's go back to our demo environment. And I'm going to log out. Now I'm going to next log in as the citizen developer. So I'll go back to my mailbox, copy the citizen developer credentials. Go ahead and click sign in. Now once you log in, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my password so that I can remember it while logging into my mobile device. Let's go ahead and click save. Press re-login. Go ahead and click sign in. Now one thing you'll notice immediately is the permission framework is working because I'm not seeing the manage center module, which should not be shown to the citizen developer anyways. If I go to app builder, go to all apps, you're also not seeing the package migration app listed over here because remember my administrator never gave me permission to change the design of that application. Now before we get started, let's look at the AgilePoint app builder. Think of it as more of your universal application development platform. You can build all sorts of applications over here. Process driven applications, something which we have been known to be pretty strong over the years. Form based applications with no process at all, data in, data out kind of applications. Mobile applications, chatbot applications, AI applications, blockchain applications, all within the same product and interface itself. Now, typically, when people start building an application, the first question to answer is, where do I want to store my data? AgilePoint supports both application first approach, where you can start building the application and it will generate the data source on the fly for you, or a data first approach where you can start from a data source. I'm going to take a data first approach, so I'm going to go to data entity. This is a browser-based entity designer where, as I mentioned, citizen developers can create tables and their relationships without having to write any complex SQL queries. It's an optional component, and later on you'll see why I'm calling it optional. It comes with some standard entities which are pre-built. You can always add a new entity. Let's call it demo. Add it to a category. The primary key field, let's call it name. I'll enable audit logging for this entity. I will enable export, import of data as well as metadata. And let's go ahead and click create entity. Created some standard columns over here and also the primary key column. I can always add more of them. There's a whole lot of field types which are supported. I'll say, let's add a date of birth control. I can specify my validations, whether this is indexed, unique, whether it's available for reporting. So you can quickly, using your browser itself, start building your table. You can set up relationship between tables. You can see their entity diagram as well. Right now it's only a couple of columns. I'll show you a more completed tables pretty soon. You can manage the data in your tables. You can create various views and see them. You can set up permissions against these entities as well. Now you're seeing the second layer of security over here. Previously you saw the platform layer. Now it's the data layer. You can specify who are the owners of this entity, who can change the metadata of this entity, who can read, edit, create, delete records, or who can report against the entity. Now this is a truly shared data source. It can be shared across applications, and if it is used in any of the applications, processes, or forms, those would be listed over here. And because I've enabled audit trail, you're seeing both the design time as well as runtime audit trail would be captured. So if I add a new column or if I add a new record, it will tell me who added it and at what time. Now this is when I was creating a table from scratch. Oftentimes, citizen developers have data already downloaded in an Excel format or something. You can always import it. We support 3 formats: JSON, XML, Excel. Now if you are wondering how it looks like, here is the Excel sheet. It has a header row and some data rows in there. I'm going to go ahead and select it, click import. It parses the Excel sheet, tells me here are the various columns. I can further fine tune it if I wanted. I'll say this will be email and this will be of type phone. Once I'm satisfied, I can go and pick my primary key. Process instance ID is unique. A category, and go ahead and click import entity. Now what this does is it parses data out of that Excel, creates a table, all the columns are automatically created, and if I go to the data tab, all the records have been imported as well. Similarly, I might have created this entity in a different environment and I want to import it. I can always do that. That's what I'm going to do today. I'll import my customer entity. It has few columns like address, age, city, customer name, email, phone, state. Right now there is no relationship. If I go to entity diagram, it's a single table right now. If I go to data, you'll see three different rows: John Smith, Steve Smith, David Warner. I'm going to go to permission. I'll give my developer permission to use this table. If I go to the home page, I'll bring in a child entity as well, which is called order. Let's go ahead and click import. Now in this case, it created order specific fields. If I go to relationship, now there is a relationship which exists between the customer and order table. And if I go to ER diagram, you can see the relationship as well. There are few sample orders which are available. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my developer user permission to this entity. Now my entities have been created. You can always look at the ER diagram for the entire database as well, provided you have permission. What you see over here now is the ER diagram for all the tables I have permission to. I'm going to go back to App Builder and I'm going to start building my application. Now it is asking me how do I want to build my app. I can start with generative AI, which I'll show you later on. I can create a form-based application as well, which would have no sort of process. But for today's demo, I'm going to stick to process-based application. I'm going to give it a name. AgilePoint is completely localized in 15 different languages. You can pick a language of your choice. This is the design time language for your application. Runtime language can be any language in the world. I'm going to stick to default, which is English in my case. Give it a category. Enable collaborative development so that multiple developers can work on the same app in parallel. Click next. I'll enter the name of my first process model. Now next it is asking me how this process is going to be triggered. It can be using AgilePoint eForms, which is our WYSIWYG form designer. It could be using external forms like ASP.NET, JSP, PHP, Angular, React using our REST API. It could be based on messages or events like incoming email, or a file gets dropped to a file system, or an event occurring in blockchain or Kafka. It could be a system-to-system orchestration style process with no human action at all. It can be parent-child process, and we also can listen to external system events like item got added to SharePoint or Salesforce. I'm going to stick to eForms. I'll add a couple of swim lanes. Choose my app theme. Click next. Now next it is asking me what is going to be my primary data store. Remember, this is only my primary data source it is talking about. We support more than 100 plus secondary data sources. And if you remember, I mentioned AgilePoint data entity is an optional component. We took a little bit of a different approach compared to rest of the vendors. Rest of the vendors force you to use their entity structure, but customers might have already got existing SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle tables. They can always build applications on top of it, or they might want to build applications on top of Salesforce entity or a list or library in SharePoint, or for that matter, an Excel sheet which is kept in Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox. They can always do that as well. You can select blank. In that case, it would have been an application first approach. I'll say I'll start with a data entity. Show me all the custom entities. There's an entity called customer. I want to define app on top of it. I can specify my data synchronization rules, which fields should be available to my application. And remember, customer has a child table called order. I'm going to bring in data from that as well. Next, it is asking me, do I want to set up any miscellaneous items like app-specific connections, connections to document repository, style sheet, app-specific roles or groups, images, JavaScript. I'm going to say, let's go with default. Now you're seeing the third layer of security, the application layer. How do I want to secure my application? I'm going to say, only allow a user called developer to change the design of this application. It takes all of that information, starts configuring my application, and it will redirect me to the process designer page because I said this is a process-based application. So you are now looking at the first core pillar of AgilePoint, which is the process designer. Now typically, A lot of products support only two process patterns, sequential and state machine. AgilePoint supports more than 15 different process design patterns, the likes of sequential and state machine, but of also rollback, skip, milestone based. Those kind of patterns are all supported. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly rename these swim lanes. Now, before we get started, let's look at the data source. It's a truly hybrid data source. You have form data, model data. Right now, those are empty. But you'll see my table, I selected the customer table and it has a child table called order management, which is nested under the customer table. You can always add more if you wanted. So go over here, say add the SharePoint data source. Let's call it demo. Connect to SharePoint using the connection my IT has created. It will do a dynamic discovery, shows me these are the sites available. Say connect to root site. Select a list or library called customer order. I can specify my synchronization rules. I can create relationships as well. In this case, I'm going to actually tab out of it because I'm going to show you how you can bring these things on the fly itself as well. I'm going to minimize this. Now, before we start designing a form, let's look at the second core pillar of AgilePoint, which is the integration layer. AgilePoint integrates on more than 100 different line of business systems with more than 1100 process actions available out of the box. So all the common ones like OCR, Amazon, Microsoft, RPA products like Automation Anywhere, UiPath, Blue Prism, Power Automate, various document repositories like Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, various database providers, digital signature providers, Elasticsearch, various AI providers, Google, AWS, Azure, various CRM providers, HubSpot, Dynamic CRM, Salesforce. The list all goes on and on. There are ERP providers like SAP and NetSuite supported. If you drill down into one of them, what you can see is the extent of coverage of these integrations is pretty good. Typically, when a vendor says that they integrate with these systems, they do very lightweight integration, create, update, delete, and retrieve. But we have studied all of these systems in detail, and we know something like add attachment or change ownership cannot be done by just update API. So we have created specific building blocks for those. Now, if you do not find one of your connectors, you can always use the protocol-based one. It supports all the protocols listed over here: gRPC, OData, REST, WCF, web service. So you can always do that, and you can always create your reusable assets and make them drag and drop for your user base by using our extension frame. I'm going to close a couple of these, and let's start by designing the form. I'm going to drag and drop the start task activity. Let's call it submit. We'll select blank form for now. Now what you're seeing is the third core pillar of AgilePoint, which is the form designer. It's a pretty comprehensive form designer, and you'll see why I'm saying that. It has a lot of features. If you go to settings over here, I can control some of the settings like tab ordering, appearances, setup font styles, background images. I go to actions. A WYSIWYG designer, as I said, so if just by point and click, I can enable more buttons like print and save as PDF. I can move the button positioning around if I wanted. Suppose multilingual capabilities, so I can uh, translate the form in multiple languages or make it available in multiple languages for my users. I'm going to switch it from 3-column layout to 2-column layout. And my form is a lengthier one, so I'm going to break it down in sections. The first section will be called customer details. Next one will be called location. Third one will be called order history. The last one will be called payment details. I have complete control over it. I can specify my visibility rules for these sections as well to make it dynamic. I can say allow users to jump from first tab to last tab or go in a sequential order. As far as layout is concerned, I can pick my navigation bar style. It can be chevron based, block based, line style, where the navigation bar and buttons would appear, what would be the colors. I'm going to stick with default. And now you can see there are 4 sections on my form. Next, we are going to look at the toolbox. Now, typically a form designer has around 35 to 40 controls. AgilePoint provides you more than 75 different controls out of the box. Under common control toolbox, you'll see the likes of label, text box, text area, drop downs, radio buttons, file upload control. We support more than 12 different repositories, subform, rich text controls, rich label. If I go to advanced controls, you'll see more purpose-built ones like charts, phone, email, postal code, social security, advanced ones like star rating, data grids, captchas, people picker, geolocation. And we OEM Telerik as well. So you can see all the Telerik controls. I'll drag and drop an auto suggest control, which is a type ahead control. I'll call it customer name. If I go to configure tab, I'm going to mark it as required. And my requirement is as soon as I start typing, it should look up data against an external system and prompt me to select a user if the name matches. I'm going to enable sorting. I'm going to define my first external lookup, just like Process Designer at form level as well. It supports a whole lot of integrations. I'm going to select data entity initially, get customers. This will be of type name value. Only show me customer entities. I want to go against the customer table, and there is a field called customer name, which I want back as both name and value. I can define a filter condition as well, and I want all my customer names back. If I was a programmer, I can go to the advanced tab and write it as a query as well, but I'm going to stick to citizen developer mode. Now, my requirement is that as soon as the form is submitted, the customer information should be updated back to the customer table. So I'm going to specify a data binding. Now you see it is data bound to this node within my data source. Now if I quickly preview my form, I can test my form without having to publish it. If you remember, I have a customer named John Smith in my entity, and that's showing up as soon as I start typing. Now you saw me drag and drop a control from here and then do a data binding from here. Now it can be far more easier. AgilePoint's built-in AI can help me with that. If I drag and drop email, it tells me that email control is the best control to use for this scenario based on the data classification. If I drag and drop phone, it will suggest to use the phone control. I can further fine-tune it. I can set it to dialed in US. Age will be a number box. Address would be a text area. Address tend to be lengthier, so I'm going to span it across 2 columns, adjust the width. I don't have to write any lengthy CSS for doing these kind of things. Add a city, state will be a drop down. I'm going to add a couple of internal fields, ID and customer ID. Now for customer ID, it tells me it could not figure out what is the best control to use, so it is showing me all the compatible ones. I'm going to say this is going to be a number, use a number box. Now my requirement is as soon as I select the customer name, if it is an existing customer, all the other fields should be pre-populated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an auto lookup. We'll call it get customer details. Go to configure, add it. It will be of type data entity. This time it will be multiple columns because I want to get values of multiple fields. Say go against customer table. There's a whole lot of columns. All I'm interested in is few columns, so I'm going to select ID and specify my mapping here. Now remember, this mapping is different from the mapping I just did. Over there I was specifying when the form is submitted, where should the data go and reside. In this case, I'm triggering an external lookup, and the lookup results set. Once it comes back, where should it be populated. So I'm going to say populate the ID control back with the value in the ID column, customer ID to customer ID, email to email, phone to phone, age to age, address to address, and I'm going to select city and state as well, city to city and state to state, and which customers information. So I'm going to say where customer name is equal to customer name in my data source, which is the value coming from the first control on my form. Go ahead and click finish. Now, APIs tend to be expensive. So you don't want to be making unnecessary API calls either. You have complete control over it. You can specify when your API would be triggered or when your lookup would be triggered on form load, on specific field value chain or related field value chain, whatever I use in the where clause or the filter condition. I'm going to say related field value chain. So this makes my form highly performant as well. I'm going to go ahead and click save, test out my logic, select John Smith. And the moment I selected, rest of my controls are all populated. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark these two controls as hidden controls. No point showing them, those are internal fields. I'm going to go to the behavior tab and mark them as invisible. Next, I'm going to go to location tab over here. We'll add a map control. I'm going to tie this to Google Maps and set the zoom level to 7. Allow my location access. I'm going to add a geolocation control as well to capture coordinates of the user. I'm going to say auto capture user's coordinates if he moves 100 meters within the current radius and feed that to the map control. I'm going to go ahead and set up my order history. Now on customer, if you remember, I set it up for immediate sync. I did the data binding. For order history, I could have done that if I wanted. Drag and drop from here and select the data grid or subform. However, I want order not to be synchronized back, so I'm going to set up a no sync policy in this case. I'm going to drag and drop data grid. Let's call it order history. Now I could have directly bound it from here to a lookup, but I'm going to show how one control can feed data to other controls. So I'm going to tab out of this. I'm going to span it across multiple columns, stretch it a little bit more. I'm going to add an auto lookup. We call it get orders. Go to configure. Let's add another lookup. Call it get orders. This will be of type multiple columns. This time we are going to go against the order table. Again, there's a whole lot of columns. All I'm interested in showing is order date, quantity, unit price, product, and total. And which customer's order? So I'm going to say where customer ID is equal to customer ID specified on the first tab of my form. And go ahead and click finish. I'm going to bind the result set back to my repeating controller, which is the grid in this case, and trigger only when the related field value changes. Let's go ahead and test it. So if I type John Smith, location is getting captured, the coordinates are getting captured, and I'm seeing his order history as well. Great, this seems to be working. Let's complete remaining form. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and add a drop-down control to show product catalog. Let's call it products. This will be required. Connect to an external product catalog. Enable sorting. And what I'm going to do is this time, you have already seen me do enough of data entity. I'm going to go against SharePoint. Connect to SharePoint using the connection my IT has created. Let's call it get products. This will be of type name value. It will again do dynamic discovery. I'll say connect to root site. There's a list called products. In that, for name and value, bring the column called product name back. As a result set, I can specify my where clause. I want all products back, so I'll leave it. Test my query. It is telling me everything is working, and go ahead and click finish. Now, for order, I'm going to set up a deferred sync. It will be only inserted once the payment has been authorized. That's why I'm not doing any of the data binding here. I'm going to add a date column. Let's call it order date. We'll default it to current date. I'm going to add a number box control. Let's call it quantity. currency control. Let's call it unit price. Now you have seen me do enough lookups. I could have looked up unit price as well. Just in case you are wondering how it looks, here is my product catalog in SharePoint list. It has the product names and unit price. I could have looked it up, but you have already seen me do enough of those, so I'm going to just make it manual entry for now. And I want my order total to be calculated automatically. I'm going to add a formula control. Let's call it amount. Let's configure it. If I bring up the formula builder, you can select one of the existing formulas and you can insert it. My formula is pretty simple, so I'm going to just quickly build it. It's going to be quantity into unit price, validate it, click OK. And I'm going to add my last control, which is a credit card control. Now, this is an example of a composite control. I could have dragged and dropped 10-15 of these text boxes and created such control, but we provide you a lot of these utility kind of controls as well. I'm going to say I'm going to only support MasterCard and Visa card, show billing address only, span it across multiple columns. Now, one of the requirements I have is no point showing amount field if unit price is blank. So I'm going to bring in my first dynamic behavior. I'll bring up rule builder and I'll say if unit price is blank, hide control amount, and trigger this on form load as well. Now it can go pretty complex. If you're wondering, you can always nest these rules together. You can add multiple rules as well. You can chain them. I have a simple rule in this case. Let's go ahead and click save, preview. Let's select the customer over here, John Smith. His information is populated, location is getting captured, order history is showing up. Now if you see over here on the last tab, the amount field is not showing up. Catalog is coming back from SharePoint. I'm going to enter the value, and as soon as I enter it and tab out of it, the amount field starts showing up. So the dynamic behavior is also working. So I'm done with my form. Before we leave the form designer, few other things. If I'm a professional developer who is proficient writing CSS, I can always inject my own app or form specific CSS. I can override the entire form behavior. I can inject my own JavaScript as well. I can preview my form, how it would look like in PC, tablet, both phone and landscape. I can do that. Just now you saw me define a control level rule. You can tie rules to the form events as well, on form load before submit, validation on submit after submit. There's a whole lot of actions which you can perform based on your conditions. And even you can use the form mode over here to write mobile specific or tablet specific rules as well. We do support multilingual capabilities. It provides you a translator where you can translate your form labels. In this case, I have only specified one language in my environment. If I would have gone to Manage Center and added more, I could see those, I can translate it, and then I can test my form how it looks in that language. Similarly, I can bulk edit controls and change properties in bulk edit instead of doing it on that configuration window. There's a built-in collaboration, we'll see that later on. And at design time, I can see how my form would look like in PC browser mode, in tablet, both landscape and portrait, and in phone if it becomes a single column. I can always move things around. I can delete some controls. I can set up specific rules for those devices as well. I'm going to stick to default. I'm going to go ahead and do a save and check-in. Click next. Let's call it submit. Make it available for offline access. And go ahead and click finish. Now if I look at the form data right now, you can see my data source is growing. There are now form data which is available. Model data is still empty. I'm going to define some temporary process variables. These are fields which I might not want to show on my form. So I can define it as temporary process variables. I'm going to add a few of them. I can pick up a data type. I'm going to say order ID is my first element. Second one would be payment ID. These are all internal fields. Status is my third one. And the fourth one would be risk level. I'm going to bring in some machine learning later on to check the credit risk. So as you can see, my data source is growing. Now let's bring in some integration. Once the form is submitted, I want to authorize the payment. So I'm going to go to PayPal, drag and drop authorize payment activity. I'm going to play a citizen developer in this case, so I'm not going to configure this activity. Maybe I don't know how to do that. So I'm going to leave it unconfigured. It is showing a warning sign right now. Now, AgilePoint is a self-learning platform. As I start building the application, it studies all the patterns and tells me what is the next best activity to use. I could have always dragged and dropped one from here, but it's telling me these are the typical actions you would have taken after this. So I'm going to say, okay, I want to add a condition. I'm going to define my rule just like I did with my form designer. There's a rule builder on process side as well. I'm going to say if payment status is equal to authorized, and just to make it a little bit more complex, I'll say if the user placing the order is more than 21 years of age, go for straight through processing, else go for second round of approval. Go ahead and click finish. Now we are going to complete the happy path. Now it is time to insert the order, do that deferred sync. I'm going to go to data entity, say time to create a record in data entity. You call it create order. Look for a custom entity called order management and specify the mapping. Now I'm going to map only a few nodes over here. I'm going to say map product to product, order date to order date, quantity to quantity, unit price to unit price, total to total, and which customer's order? Customer ID equal to customer ID. Now, when the system inserts this order, it is going to send me back the order ID, which I'm going to store in my order ID variable. And go ahead and click finish. And next, it is telling me typically you would have sent out an email. I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, let's create an email. We'll go ahead and click next. I can select from one of the global email templates or define a new one. I'm going to specify who will receive this email. This will be whoever's email ID is in the data source. And define my content. It's a WYSIWYG email template editor, so I'm going to say your order has been processed. It's a clear variable. I'll drag and drop customer name. Your order has been processed. Order ID is whatever order ID I have in my variable. And go ahead and click OK. Now, before I leave that window, one more thing I wanted you to see is that AgilePoint does support multilingual capabilities everywhere, just like our process and forms. Even in the email, you can define email in multiple languages, and user would have received email in the language as per his locale. Now, this is an example of an HTML text-based email. Later on, you'll see an HTML-based email as well. I'm going to go ahead and click finish. So happy path is done. Let's complete the escalation path. Now, if the authorization fails, we want to bring in a human approval step. Let's say add a new form. I could have selected the existing form as well. I'll add a new form in this case. I'll still base it based on existing form template so that I don't have to do all of that work again. I'm going to select the submit form as a starting point. It copies the whole structure. You saw me spend all the time building my first form. Next form onward, it takes only a few minutes. So you see, entire structure is copied over for me. I can go to bulk edit, remove whatever I didn't want, mark them as read only, change properties. I'm going to add a new section called approval. And I'm going to make that as default so that I don't have to scroll through all the sections to get to it. I'm going to add a couple of labels over here. Let's call it risk level. Another label will show the value of the risk level, which will be coming back from my machine learning model. I'm going to map it over here. And because it is that important, I'm going to say this should be big, bold, red. I'm going to put a yes no radio button over here to capture my approval decision. Go to configure, mark it as required, change the orientation to horizontal. So as you can see, it's a true Visibig designer. Things are changing in the background. Let's add a file upload control to capture any documentary proof. Let's call it proof. Go to configure, add connection to a document repository. We support a whole lot of document repositories. I'm going to select SharePoint today. I'm going to connect to SharePoint. It again does the dynamic discovery. I'll say connect to root site. There's a document library called customer order. On the root path of that customer order library, store the file. I can specify my file conflict rules as well, override the file, auto increment file name, or do not allow to upload. I'm going to go with default auto increment. I can specify what kind of actions the user can take, whether he can upload the file, view the file, download the file. I'll give him all permissions. You can set up some file extension restrictions. You can set up file size restrictions. I'm going to go with default for now. Span it across two columns. The last control I'm going to add is a comments control. Again, an example of a composite utility control. And I'm going to span it also across two columns. I'm going to also add one more rule. Now, this is my second dynamic rule. I'm going to say if approval decision is no, then comments should be mandatory, else not. Let's go ahead and preview this. So right now, as you can see, both of them are mandatory. If I say yes, it is no longer mandatory. So my logic seems to be working. I'm going to go ahead and say save and check in. So as you can see, within a matter of a couple of minutes, my second form is now ready, even though it had a lot of controls. I'm going to give 1 day SLA for user to perform this task and also make it accessible offline. Now next I have to specify who is going to work on it. It can be based on roles, groups, users. It can be a variable as well, or it can be one of the system macros. I can say whoever initiated the task, figure out his manager and assign the task to him. In my case, I'm going to leave it as process initiator so that I don't have to log in and log out. I can always add an email notification to this step as well. I'm going to say notify the user that the new task has been assigned to him. Next, I'm going to check for approval. I'll put a couple of rules here. If I go to my form data, I'll look for a node called approval decision. And I'll say if approval decision is true, then we want the order to be inserted in the system. So I'm going to actually do the remapping, move it a little bit so that you can see it better. And if it is rejected, I'm going to take it to stop. Typically, I would have sent out an email over here as well. You will already see me do one email configuration, so I'm going to skip that. I'm going to save my model. And I'm going to validate it. Now it should fail because I have not configured the authorized payment activity, and that's what it is telling me. I'm going to bring in my application developer role. In this case, I'm going to leave a message for him that I need help configuring the PayPal activity. So you can see the collaboration. I'm going to tag the developer user. Click submit. He would be notified. Just like Word document, you can always see the comments, you can resolve them, reply back to it as well. I'm going to go ahead and do a save and check-in. And for the application, I'm going to check in on any of the files I have checked out. Now if I log out, and let's log in back as the developer. If I go back to my mailbox over here, I'm going to log in as developer user. Now you can see developer is seeing a little bit more options. I'm going to quickly change his password. Go ahead and click save. We're going to log back again. Let's go ahead and sign in. If I go to App Builder now, my apps, I see the app listed over here. And if I open the process model, I can see there's a comment waiting for me, which is showing up. I'm going to go ahead and configure the authorized payment activity. Go ahead and click next. Select my connection to PayPal, which my IT has defined. Now you saw me do a whole lot of manual mapping. You can always do auto map. It will intelligently map all the matching node names. In this case, you'll go to response. PayPal sends me back a whole lot of information. All I'm interested in is ID will be mapped to payment ID and state will be mapped to status variable over here. That's it. So ideally, it could have been easily done by a citizen developer as well. I just wanted to show the collaboration feature. You can always associate documentation with your activity. It can be used at the design time as well as runtime for training new users. You can always save a copy of this configured activity as well. You can give it a name, specify your sharing rules. And now it is available as a drag and drop, which can be made available in other process models. And if you go inside, you can see all the configuration is intact. We'll go ahead and close this. So now this is done. I'm going to say mark this as resolved. I can reply back to it as well. I can validate it. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead and do a save and check-in. And let's publish this application. I'm publishing version 1. Now typically at this point of time, I could go to Work Center, My Apps, and bring the app from there. However, I want to build some nice looking portal experience for my users. AgilePoint is not about just building forms. You can use our UX designer to build portal experiences as well. I'm going to go to Page Builder. Comes with some quick start templates. You can use one of them or say add a page. Let's call it demo. You can add a row. You can add as many columns as well. Bring up the widget window over here. You can see all the widgets available: button, e-form, headings, hyperlink, rich text, work center, raw HTML. If you go to media category, audio, image carousel. If you look at cards, animation card, video cards, image cards, profile cards, various layouts, and you can embed charts and reports as well. Now these are the widgets, but think of it as unlimited widgets because one of the widgets listed over here is eForm. So using eForm widget designer, you can define any kind of widget. For example, if your announcements were stored in SAP, you can create an announcement widget using eForms, which is looking up data against that SAP. Now in interest of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import a page which my graphic designer has already created for me. Page has been imported. I'm going to go ahead and publish it. Now, as an admin, I could have set this as a home page as well. I'm logged in as a developer, so I'm going to just quickly preview. And you can see from this kind of a look and feel, now suddenly this will be the look and feel of my portal once it is made available. So you see some image carousel going over here. You have some statistics, a product catalog, some tabs at the top, more of a website look and feel. I'm going to go ahead and say submit new order, brings up my form. Now the first run of this, I'm going to actually select a customer which does not exist. I'm going to enter some information. Hit next. Location is getting captured. It's a new customer, so no orders are there. I'm going to place an order for an armchair. It's $400. I'm going to put it on my Visa card. I'm going to copy one of my temporary cards from here. Select my expiration date, CVV number, and let's go ahead and click submit. Now if I go back, go to Manage Center, go to Runtime Management, and as an application owner, look for my process. It will show me all the applications I have access to, various statuses. I'll say bring down processes with all statuses, and you can see it is already completed. If I drill down, you can see the complete audit trail. I can see what's happening, a visual audit trail. It went for the straight through processing because the payment was authorized. A textual audit trail, which activity was performed at what time when it was completed. A human audit trail with all the human tasks, what events were raised on this particular process instance, what was the data, so I can see a data view. If it was a parent-child process, I can see the entire hierarchy and what notifications were sent out as well. If I go to data entity, customer table, data, you can see the new record is inserted over here. So the system seems to be working. Now next what we are going to do is, I'm going to configure this application to be moved to a higher environment. I'm going to go to App Builder, Package, create a new package. Now first I'm going to show you how you can do it manually within just few clicks. However, I will also show you an automated way as well. I'm going to create a package called form, add apps and dependencies. It will intelligently figure out all the dependencies for me. It will also say move a page as well. It's called Wax of Furniture. It will detect all the dependencies. Go ahead and click Save. I can always select this, export it. You can say allow publish and import, and put any custom instructions, password protected as well. But I'm going to show you how you can actually automate it using your pipeline, CI/CD pipelines. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and go to Work Center, My Apps, Package Deployment app. My information is already populated. I'm going to just enter my phone number. Say move from development environment to production environment. I can also select staging. In this case, it lists down the packages. I'm going to say allow publish and import. I can also specify what permissions should be set up on the target environment. I'm going to do that. And as you can see, these tabs start showing up. Any instructions, tag any people I want to be notified. Because I said I want to specify app permission, it is showing me the app permission screen. I'm going to say allow everybody to use this one. Even at data entity level, let everybody create records, edit records. Everybody should be able to view that page. I can limit to specific users or groups as well. Any additional instructions? I'm going to go ahead and click submit. If I go to my inbox processes, this process is running. Let's look at it. I'm going to open it in a bigger window. As you can see, right now it is sitting on an approval step. Now I made myself the approval for all the steps, if you remember. So I'm going to bring it up. Just go to the approval step and say approved. Go ahead and click submit. And it has started exporting the package, and it will import it in the different environment in this case. And as you can see, the process has completed. It has set up all the permissions and sent out notifications as well. So if I have to test it out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say switch to my production environment. If I go to App Builder, I can see the app has been moved. If I go to Data Entity, I can see the two entities have been moved. If I go to Page Builder, I can see the Wax of Furniture page has been moved to the production as well. So the deployment worked. Now next, what we are going to do is we are going to sign out and log in back as citizen developer and start making few more changes to this application. So I'm going to log in as my citizen developer. Go to app builder. I'm going to bring in some additional logic. So I'm going to import my already created application, a simple utility application. You saw me do an automated deployment. You can always manually import it as well. Did a dependency check, ensured me everything is in place. Let's look at the process model. It's a very simple process model. All it is doing is it takes all the record from the parent, passes it on to this child process where it is invoking an RPA job. I'm using UiPath in this case. If I go over here, you can see it's connecting to a queue in UiPath and inserting all these values. Next step, I want to collect customer feedback. Now remember, customer is not a registered user within my organization. So I have to go outside my organization boundary. So we call this capability anonymous form. I'll show you how to configure it. I'm going to delete the existing configuration. Give it a name. Select a connection where I'll specify the account which should be used to make any API calls. I'm going to enter my password, validate it. Everything looks good. Click update. I can still lock it down to certain firewall rules, certain IP ranges. I can whitelist specific APIs which can be made from this form. And I can even ask to be notified using a multi-factor authentication. Even though this is anonymous, it will mail out an 8-digit code to me which I have to enter to open the form. Now, typically, you would not do that on a customer feedback form, but just to show the concept, I'm going to keep it enabled and send it to myself. Let's generate it. Go to the email template. Now this is an example of an HTML email template. I'm going to scroll down and change the link to the newly created link. Go ahead and click OK. I'm going to do some sentiment analysis, and if sentiment score is less than 70% based on customer comment, I'm going to bring in customer service representative to contact them to understand the issue. And at the end, I'm going to archive any of the uploaded documents. Let's go ahead and validate it. Everything looks good. Save and check in. Publish the process. So the first version of this application is available. Let's go to our parent process and we are going to consume these changes. Before I do that, I'm going to make 2-3 changes to the process. I'm going to bring in machine learning. Now you see this is a simple process, but imagine this was a 40-50 step process, right? And with machine learning, I want to make it intelligent that it can jump from step number 2 to step number 48 depending on a specific output by machine learning. So I can give more personalized experience to individual customers. So I can do that. But if I had to add a lot of that kind of logic within the workflow itself, within these connector lines, it would get quite complex. AgilePoint has unique capability around this. If I go to my machine learning stencil, you'll see we connect to Amazon, Azure, both. But I'm going to drag and drop in a blank area, not within the connector lines. This is more like a governing activity which can govern how the process is running across various activities that can monitor events. So I'm going to call it check risk. Add my first listener. I can add as many as I want without making my process complex. Connect to AWS. The machine learning model I want to consume is credit card risk data analysis. I'm going to set trigger only when payment authorization activity has been completed. Specify my mapping. The left hand side you see my process schema, right hand side it is telling me this is what the model is expecting as input. I'm going to say pass the card type, age, city and state. I'm going to use that to determine whether it is a high risk transaction or not. In response, the predicted label, store it in risk level. And I'm going to bring in some process routing. As I mentioned, I'm going to enable change flow and define my first rule. I'm going to say if risk level is high, it can be a complex rule as well, then even though the payment has been authorized, go for a second step of approval, else go for straight through processing. I can add as many rules as I wanted. I'm going to go ahead and save this, click finish. Now I'm going to make some changes to my form as well. I'm going to bring in an additional data source to bring in some real-time inventory check. I'm going to add a new section over here, or in fact, let's stick to existing section. I'm going to add a number box. Let's call it available units. Default value is 0, and let's mark it as read only. I'll add a label. Let's call it out of stock to show out of stock message. And because it is important, let's do it again. Let's set it to 20, bold, and red color. Let's fetch the value of the inventory. I'm going to add an auto lookup control. Let's call it get inventory. Add my lookup. This time I'm going to go against Salesforce. Connect to Salesforce. Give it a name. This will be of type multiple columns. There's an entity in Salesforce called product inventory. Let's select that. It has a whole lot of columns. All I'm interested in is one column only, which is available units. I'm going to map it to available units control on my form, and which products inventory. So I'm going to say when name equal to product name. Now, just in case you're wondering how this one is looking, if I go back to Salesforce, here is my product inventory list. If you can see, Entertainment Center and Showcases out of inventory, the rest of them have existing inventory. Let's go ahead and click finish. Say only execute when related field value changes. I want to change the rule I had. I'm going to delete that simple rule I defined previously. There's no sense showing rest of the controls if the product is out of stock. So I'm going to say if available units is equal to 0, hide control quantity, unit price, amount, payment information, and show control out of stock. Execute it on form load as well. Let's go ahead and save this. Preview. If you go to this tab, you can see if I select an armchair, rest of the controls start showing up. If I select Entertainment Center, they'll go away and out of stock message starts showing up. So my logic seems to be working. I'm going to go ahead and do a save and check in. Now, last change I'm going to bring in is I'm going to bring in my child process. I'm going to call it collect feedback. I can consume a process from within the same application, different application, or it could be dynamic. It could be different for different instances. I'm going to say from different application. You can specify a specific version to be consumed or always the latest version. Specify my naming convention. I can specify whether I want to share all the attributes from parent to child. I can give it a copy, or maybe it belongs to a different department. I do not want to share my credit card information. So I can always do a specific mapping. That's what I'm going to do in this case. I'm going to map product to product, order date to order date, quantity to quantity, unit price to unit price, total to total, file name to doc name, customer ID to user ID, customer name to customer name, email to email, phone to phone, age to age, address to address, city to city, and state to state. Go ahead and click finish. Everything looks okay. I'm going to go ahead and quickly validate it. Looks good. Let's do a save and check-in. Publish my second version of the application. This is version 1.01. Now if I go to the version history, you can see the AgilePoint has a built-in version control system. So you can see version 1 was published, it has been retired, there's version 1.01. You can always roll back, set as milestone, download previous version, make this previous version the current version, view its dependency checklist. So there's a whole lot of options. Similarly, check in, check out, undo checkout, and publish it. I can even clone an application and use it as a starting point. If I select this and go to permissions, you can see other permissions showing up as well. You previously saw app owner and app designer who can use the application, who can report against it, comes with the built-in audit trail as well. This time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Work Center and consume it from there. Now my Work Center is pretty empty right now because it's a new environment. Just to give you a quick overview of the Work Center, I'm going to switch to a different browser window over here. Shows me a complete overview of what's happening, how many tasks are overdue, how many are in new status, calendar view, my planned tasks for the day, my watch list, my VIP processes or can be listed over here, my frequently used apps, my favorite apps, my recent tasks, recent requests. If I drill down, it's a Kanban style experience. You can see various buckets of tasks. If you're one of those person who prefers to work off a grid view, you can always switch to grid view as well. There are various views. You're looking at my task. As a manager, I can see my team's task. Department head can see his department's task. I can see my team and sub-team's task if I'm an N-level manager. As a group lead, I can see my group's task. As an application owner, I can manage my application tasks right from here instead of going to Manage Center. Similarly, if I go to processes, I see a bucketed list of all the processes which are running, which I started, which I worked on, whether it's my processes, my team's processes. So those are all available. You can create custom views as well. If you go over here, you'll see I have created some app-specific views, which can be embedded in the page builder, by the way. You can manage drafts without having to submit the form. You can look at the list of applications you have access to. You can go to statistics. Let's look at delegations first. You can set up your vacation schedules over here. You can click on create from user to user, your delegation schedule, when you will be out of office, which days, and assign the task to the other user. I go to statistics, shows me how am I performing on various applications I have access to. Go to the previous month. You can see my performance over the few days. How am I doing? Now let's go back to our original environment in this case. Let's go to my apps, go to the com app. This time we are going to select an existing customer, John Smith. Shows the order history. I'm going to order 4 chairs, $40 each. I'm going to put it as my Visa card. And let's go ahead and click submit. Now if I go back to my inbox, processes, you can see one process is running. Let's bring up the runtime visualizer. And you'll see one thing which is weird. Came here, this got activated, but then it jumped to this step. It never went to this step. The reason for that is the machine learning is coming into picture. If I drill down, bring it up, you can see it is a high-risk transaction. I'll still go ahead and approve it. I'll attach a file. I'll put a comment and go ahead and submit it. As you can see, the process moved forward. The order got inserted. I would have received an email. I'm going to drill down into the child process. They sent a message to RPA what I'm going to do is go back to my UiPath console over here, run it. What it is simulating is maybe there is a system which doesn't have an API, takes all that data from my parent form and passes it on to the child process, which is invoking that win form using UiPath. I'm going to tab out of it to save time. Let's stop this. Let's go back. Now next, it has sent out an email for customer feedback. I'm going to switch back to my mailbox over here. I've received an email. I'm going to copy it and let's go to a private browser window. In this case, and paste the URL. It's truly anonymous. As you can see, it is mailed me a 8-digit security code. If I go back to my mailbox, there it is. I've received it. I'm going to go back, enter my security code, go ahead and click submit, and it opens up my form. I can get that kind of security as well. It'll give very bad rating. So that sentiment analysis can come into picture. And go ahead and click submit. And as you can see, it was less than 70%. So now it has assigned the task to customer service representative. Now I'm going to close this one. You've already seen me do a couple of approvals. I'm going to go to the home page and quickly clone my request. You don't have to re-enter all the data. You can quickly clone it as well. Go ahead and click submit. I created a second instance of my application. Let's bring it up. Okay, so it is right now, as you can see, sitting on the resolutions tab. What I'm going to do is I'm going to project my mobile device. And there it is. My mobile device is now projecting on the screen. I'm going to open an app called AgilePoint NX and I'm going to type my username. And I'm going to go ahead and log in. I'm going to go ahead and accept the EULA, skip the home page. If I go to the home page, it has a similar experience to my desktop. You can see the plan for the day, watch list, task summary. If I go to my apps, click on the app itself. Just like I did from my PC browser, I can fill out the form from here. It is asking me for location access. I'm going to just enter the name. It is prompting me. You can see all the information is populated. Supports both landscape and portrait mode, so you can see that. You can see the order history as well. If I go to payment detail, the product catalog is showing up. So the form works in the mobile device. Now next, what I'm going to do is, if you see, I have one task which is sitting over here. But right now you see there is an amber icon on top of it. I'm going to go ahead and click on it to take it offline. I can always click on it and open it as well. I'm going to just click on the icon and take it offline. It is asking me to enable location access. So that's done. Similarly, if I go over here, right now you see two apps listed. Again, for the new request as well, there's an amber icon. I'm going to click on it and download it. I'm going to say yes. Now at this point of time, I'm going to take my app offline. I'm going to say run the app in offline mode. So now you can see it is running in offline mode. If you see at the top, now I don't see the second app because that app I never downloaded for offline access. Same for task. I'm seeing the task which I downloaded for offline access. I can go ahead and select it, approve it. Now this one is sitting in my outbox waiting for me to come online. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go over here, come back online. Now it will synchronize in the next few seconds. As you can see, it has now synchronized and the process should move forward, and the process moved forward in this case. So that was the out-of-the-box mobile app which is available in Android and iOS store. But however, we have some advanced capabilities around it. Mobile devices as well. Now think of a company which has hundreds of thousands of employees. It's very difficult for them to go and tell each of their employees that there is an app called AgilePoint NX, download it and use it. There might be employees working on a shop floor who might not know what is AgilePoint. So you can always create custom branded mobile apps as well. So I'm in a component called Mobile App Accelerator. I go to my apps. I'll just put one of my existing apps in edit mode. I can give it a name, description, my own copyrights. My user should not be entering any URLs, authentication types. They should be pre-configured. I can create a super app with all mobile enabled applications under one umbrella or specific ones, one for billing, finance, HR. You can specify my menu options, their visibility. I can target various platforms, Android and iOS, device specific bills, public store bills, private store bills, sign it with my own certificates, specify my own stylings, upload my own artwork, no AgilePoint logo, and then just go ahead and click build. So everybody can be a mobile developer. I didn't write a single line of code. I can still generate a native mobile app out of this. Next, we are going to head into analytics. I'm going to go to settings module. Under analytics, you can see what kind of systems we can report against. It's not limited to just AgilePoint. You can report against SQL Azure, Elasticsearch, MongoDB, Oracle, Postgres, Redshift, Salesforce, Snowflake, REST service, etc. It comes with a very comprehensive persona-based, role-based access control system. So you can just click on it. You can see if you go to permissions, you can see complete setup. There's a lot of things you can control. For example, you can say whether the user belonging to this role should see a simplified view or more advanced view, whether he can put a chart, form, gauge, map, KPI kind of report parts on the report or not. Right? So you can control a lot of these different kind of settings from here itself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my Analytics Center module. Out of the box, we provide you around 60-70 reports already. So analytics and operational intelligence category, you'll see the likes of app version, average execution time, process duration, effectiveness, top 10 longest running instances. Under BAM category, you will see AgilePoint usage report, process instance statuses, user task analysis, user participation. There's a lot of sample reports as well. And if you go to the security section, you can see security and compliance related reports, things like how access tokens or data entities are being used, what's our various group and role membership, how pick lists are being used, those kind of reports. Here are a few of the examples. You can create drill down style reports. So if I click on this one, the charts automatically change. You can create more visual reports as well. Here is an example of a report having multiple report parts. You can even create dashboards as well. In this case, I've created a dashboard for Human Resources Department, which changes every few seconds to show them live data. Now, whether it is reports or dashboards, you can always export it in various formats. You can schedule it to be delivered to your mailbox automatically. You don't have to come to the report designer. Same thing goes for the dashboards as well. You can export it in various formats, schedule it. You can even play it in a slideshow mode as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and build a report actually from scratch. So I'm going to say create report. It will show me all the data sources I have been given access to. I'm going to go to a data entity called customer order. Now, typically this can go pretty complex. You can create report analytics center side joins. A join might not have to exist on the database side, and these tables might be coming from different data sources altogether as well. I'm going to go against customer table for now. The first report part I want to add is a chart. We call it by status. And over here, I want to show a distribution based on request status. So on x-axis, it will be request status. Y-axis, I want the count of process instances. By default, it was rendering a line chart, but there are a lot of chart types available: line, column, bar, area, pie, funnel, donut, combination, tree map, heat map, bubble, scatter, waterfall, sparkline. I'm going to select a pie chart. I'm going to say add a border, pick a color theme, add a legend on the bottom right corner, show percentage value label, slice label. I am one of those person who prefers a ring style pie chart mode, so I'm going to say render it as ring. Enable an automated data refresh every 30 seconds and disable pagination. So just that easily I can create a report. I'll add a second report part in this case. Let's add a free map. We call it by products, show distribution by products. So in this case, I'm going to put item description and process instance over here. I'm going to configure this. I'm going to say, let's pick a theme. Let it be multicolored. Show value label, slice label. So dining table is my hottest selling product. In this case, I can enable data refreshes as well. And the last one I want to add is I'm going to add a grid. We'll say sales report. Show me customer name. Let's fix this. Email, phone, item description, quantity, unit price, amount, and request status. It is building the grid for me. If you see, there are various grid types available: vertical, horizontal, pivot, drill down. I'm going to stick to vertical for today. I'm going to give it an alternate row color. We'll go with the default color. You can specify your formatting for headers, footers, columns, trees columns. Those kind of functionality is available. I'm going to add a custom rule. I'm going to say if request status value is equal to fail, show all controls in red color. Similarly, I can make it a drill down kind of a report as well. I can select if customer name, let's just convert it into a drillable URL. Let's just copy a URL for now. It can have variables obviously in there as well. I'm going to just paste a hard-coded URL for now. And it has become a drill down kind of a report. Now, if I see my second row page over here, you can see the failed records are showing up in red color. It seems to be working. Now, once I can save it, I can schedule it, I can even add it to my custom pages. Let's look at some of the generative AI capabilities. That's a pretty hot topic nowadays. So AgilePoint has got pretty sleek capabilities around generative AI. I'm going to go back to my environment, go to App Builder. In fact, first let's look at data entity. Maybe I just wanted to generate the data entity itself, right? Not the entire app. I can always go to generate entity with AI, paste my prompt, enter it, whatever it is. So I'm saying I want to manage home inspection data. And what it does is it goes back to the large language model and figures out what are the typical fields which you would put in a home inspection kind of a table. Now I can fine tune it, of course. I can change the types if I wanted. For example, I can say this should be a text area instead. You can always do that. Now that was if I was generating only the entity. I can similarly generate obviously the pick list as well. But what if I wanted to generate an end-to-end application? I can go to App Builder, Add App, choose Generate using AI. Now I can either start with an Excel and my form would be auto-generated. I can start with an image or a PDF. It would OCR the image and generate the whole form and its data structure. I'm going to say let AI decide. Next, it is going to ask me what kind of an app do I want to build. I'm going to quickly type something, paste it here. I am saying I want to build an app for managing home inspections. Click next. So again, it connected back to the large language model. It suggested the fields which should be there. I can always add a field manually. I can add additional fields using AI. I can move things around as well. For example, I can say property address should be text area, and on my form it should show below inspector name. There are a couple of pick list options. I want to generate options for that. I can always click on this and say home inspection type, generate typical home inspection types as an option list. Suggest me a few things. I can add additional ones. I can clean it up. I'm going to go ahead and click save. And I'll do the same thing for inspection status as well. Click generate. I can again clean it up if I want it. These are the typical inspection status. I'm going to go ahead and click save. If I scroll down the list, there's client name, client contact, additional comments. I'm going to say mark all of them as required and go ahead and click next. Give the name to my data entity which is going to be generated. Its primary key field. It's already pre-filled for me. I'm going to enter the name of my app. Call it home inspection. Category would be maybe customer service. Enable collaborative development. Click next. Specify any miscellaneous items if I wanted. I'm going to just go with default. Click next on the security page. Now what it is doing is it is taking all that information and generating a whole end-to-end form-based application for me. It will generate the views, the new form, edit form, view form. So it has generated all of that. Let's go ahead and click OK. Takes me to Form Designer. As you can see, it has generated the form. Everything is already data bound. I can move things around if I wanted. I can say, okay, this looks good. Let's go ahead and do a save and check-in. Publish my application. So the entire application is generated. Publish it. Let's launch the app. Now, right now, it has generated few views for me. All of them are blank because there's no records. I'm going to say add a new record. Brings up the form. I'm going to enter my inspection date, inspector name, property address, inspection type. Let's select mold inspection. Inspection status is completed. Passed. Client was David Warner. And any additional comments. Let's go ahead and click submit. As you can see now, I see the record as well. So the views are working and I can always bring it up in a view only mode or edit it from here itself. So it generates an end-to-end form-based application. Pretty soon we are going to generate process-based applications as well. So that's more on the application generation side of things. Now we have also added capabilities around some intelligence which is built into the platform itself, an intelligent assistant. So I'm in a demo environment here. I'm going to click on it. You can chat with this assistant, which will be shown in all the modules. I can say, who are you? And it will respond, I'm Arya, AgilePoint resource for intelligent assistance, your AI assistant trained to help on AgilePoint NX. You can even ask questions regarding code generation or how do I connect to Salesforce, for example. So for example, if I say, how do I connect to Salesforce? Now, this model has been trained to specifically answer all your AgilePoint questions. It reads that data from the documentation, prior support tickets, user forums, and then makes it available. You can see it gives you a step-by-step instruction in this case. Over here, you can always ask some additional questions to even generate a code as a developer. If you wanted to write some JavaScript and you wanted the form to the AI to generate it for you, you can say, how do I read form field values? And as you can see, it will answer that question for you and even generate a sample code which you can just copy and paste it in your JavaScript injector window. So this is one thing which we have added to the product, which is going to make the whole support experience much more easier. You don't have to go and read the documentation. You can just type your question and the large language model would try to answer that for you. Now, a couple of other miscellaneous items. As you might already be aware, AgilePoint supports the concept of bring your own portal, where as a designer, I might have designed these applications within the AgilePoint portal and make it ready. However, those applications can be served in a portal of your choice. We have done this with a couple of dozen portals, the like of ASP.NET, JSP, PHP, Angular, React, Drupal, WordPress, Salesforce, which is on the screen, SharePoint. The list goes on and on. And when I say it is embedded, it is not doing any kind of iframe. It's completely secure. It is natively showing within Salesforce. In this case, if you see the URL is Salesforce. And if I go to say this page over here, you can see this form. This is actually AgilePoint eForm, but you might think it is part of Salesforce and it is rendering as a Salesforce form. Again, it's native embedding. The reason we are able to do that is AgilePoint's architecture. It generates a pure HTML form for you. There's no custom scripting, so it can sit in any of the web portals out there. Now, today you saw me build a customer onboarding demo. You could build more fancier ones as well. It should not be just limited to a typical data entry form. Here is an example of the Tesla ordering page, which all of us might have seen at certain point of time. In this case, the same customer onboarding experience with an order management scenario. If you see, this is considered one of the best in the world. While ordering the car, I can just order it right from the website itself. And the same experience is built with eForm. Right? You can pick your colors, pick your wheel types, pick your seat colors in this case, add options, say move to payment. It shows you the summary that what would be the charge overall, and then you can enter your credit card information just like you did for the furniture store. So these kind of experiences can be built as well. So with this, we come to the end of this demo. Hopefully you could see how easy it is to use AgilePoint platform to build an end-to-end application as a citizen developer or a professional developer. Thanks a lot for your time.